Thank you.
Wait.
Did you get a chance to speak?
I did.
Thanks. Joe, thanks. I'll get out of the chairman's way, but let me just say.
As my first grade teacher used to say, Ron was tardy. Charles is tardy.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence. Let me give you a perspective on all this from Colorado. You know, if there were a mayor in our state, this has never happened as far as I know in the history of my state, but if there were a mayor of our state that went to their citizens and said, we're going to borrow a whole bunch of money that like we've never borrowed before, people would say, well, that worries me. What are you going to spend that on? Are you going to spend it on parks? No. Are you going to spend it on infrastructure? No. Are you going to spend it on mental health that we so desperately need? No. Are you going to spend it on the library? No. Are you going to spend it on a child tax credit? It'll cut child poverty in our... Nope. What are you going to spend it on? I'm going to take this money that I'm borrowing, the more money that we've ever borrowed, and I'm going to give it to the two wealthiest neighborhoods in our community and expect that somehow it's going to trickle down to everybody else. That sounds crazy, but that is their tax policy. That is a tax policy that they've now been following for decades, and it has resulted in over half of the government borrowing that we're now confronting as a country. And faced with the reality of that, complaining about, I suppose, their own fiscal irresponsibility in their effort to give the richest people in the country tax cuts at a moment when we've had the worst income inequality that we've had since the 1920s, they then decided they wanted to hold this government hostage and blow up the full faith and credit of the United States. And there's a reason why Joe Biden was able to cut such a good deal with these guys, and that's because the American people are onto them. They understand what they're doing. They've seen this movie before, and they're seeing it again right here. And I think in stark contrast is what we are proposing and saying, which is that even if we support some of what they're trying to do, for example, on the R&D tax credit, a version of that, that we're not going to be inclined to do that unless we can see support for the child tax credit, support for the earned income tax credit. There are 19 million children today who are not benefiting from the full child tax credit because of what the other side has done. Half the kids in the country have fallen back into poverty because we weren't able to extend the child tax credit, which cut childhood poverty in half, reduced hunger in America by a quarter for families. So I think there's a place we could end up here that hopefully would be of much more use to the American people, much more use to the people living in that hypothetical town where for the life of them, nobody understands why you would borrow money to give people in this country who are the wealthiest people in the largest corporations yet another tax cut. They don't understand it, and they never will. Senator Schumer said we can't talk about other news, so I'm conscious of that. But let me just say this: go Nuggets.
Other news?